What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Zero Lab. Today we have a really exciting video. We had the first huge online tournament for Pokemon TCG Pocket on Friday night this week, and the results were really cool. It was a cash tournament with $300 in prizing for the top finishers, and there were 511 players who turned up to play in this online tournament. Obviously, we've had a few online tournaments already for TCG Pocket, but this was the first really big one with more than 500 players. So today we're going to be taking a look at the results of the top decks from that tournament, show you what did the best in this $300 prizing 511 player tournament. And if you don't know where to find these tournaments, you can go to play.limitlesstcg.com to find these tournaments and start participating in them yourself if you want to. But first, we're going to start out with the top 8 decks, and we're going to take a look at first place right away. You can see, obviously, there was a lot of Gardevoir Mewtwo and a lot of Pikachu Zapdos here in the top decks, and Pikachu Zapdos is the deck that ended up taking down the whole tournament. So this list is pretty unique. There's a few cards that we hadn't seen in some of the top Pikachu decks earlier on in the weeks in this deck that took down the tournament. So first of all, we have a 2/2 line of the Blitzel Zebstrika, and these are really cool because the Blitzel just has Zap Kick for 20 for 1 lightning energy, and that's just a fine, turn 1 going second attack. But then the Zebstrika has the Thunder Spear attack for 1 lightning energy, and this attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So either the active or the bench, which is really cool because often, we'll do some damage to our opponent's Pokemon with like Pikachu Circle Circuit attack, but might not totally knock them out. They may then retreat out of that Pokemon to send something else up with full HP, and then we can target down that damaged bench Pokemon with that Thunder Spear attack on the Zebstrika. The other card to call out in here is the Pincurchin. The Pincurchin is a really interesting attacker, has that Thunder Shock attack, does 30 damage, and then flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Now, paralysis in TCG Pocket, when you are paralyzed, you cannot attack and you cannot retreat. So let's say your opponent is attacking into you with something like a Mewtwo EX and you can't quite one-shot it. You could paralyze it so it can't attack again on the following turn. Obviously, that is on a coin flip, but that can be really disruptive to your opponent's strategy. Then rounding out the deck list here, we have 2 Sabrina, 2 Research, a Giovanni, 2 X-Speed, 2 Pokeball, and a red card. So no healing in here, no potions. And then no Lieutenant Surge, obviously, because we're not playing something like that Raichu. So I think this is a really cool version of the deck. I think the Zebstrika is really cool. I think the Pincurchin is really cool, and obviously it did very well in this tournament, taking down the whole thing. So I do think that Pikachu EX, with that Zapdos EX, has shown itself to be like the S tier deck of TCG Pocket right now. It is taking down the most tournaments, and obviously has now been able to take down the biggest online tournament. Now going back here, we'll look at our second place deck, which was the Gardevoir Mewtwo deck. Pretty vanilla list here. 2/2 Ralts Curly Gardevoir line, 2 Mewtwo EX, and we had 2 Research, 2 Giovanni, 2 Sabrina, 2 Potion, 2 Pokeball, 2 X-Speed, and 1 red card. So fairly standard list, no additional psychic attackers or anything in here, but obviously the Mewtwo EX deck has shown itself to be very strong. And when you set up, when you draw into those evolution Pokemon like Curlia and Gardevoir early on in the game and get into that Psy Shadow ability early, Mewtwo has shown itself to be a very strong contender. I really enjoy this deck. I think that Mewtwo would potentially be I think it's kind of in that tier 1, right below Pikachu, but I think it could be right up there in that S tier if we did see some evolution search come into the game. Now looking at our third place list, it was another Pikachu Zapdos deck, but this time no Pincurchin, no Zebstrika, all in on the Pikachu and Zapdos, and it also has 2 of the basic non-EX Zapdos as well. Then rounding out the list with 2 Research, 2 Sabrina, 2 Giovanni, 2 red card, 2 X-Speed, 2 Potion, and 2 Pokeball. So pretty standard list here. going kind of all in on those trainers, and then just having the baby Zapdos there as another attacker as well. Although I think ideally you're not looking to often attack with it. It's just taking up a bench spot to, power up that Circle Circuit attack for the Pikachu EX. Our fourth place list here then was another Pikachu Zapdos deck, but this time instead of the two baby Zapdos, it had one baby Zapdos and one Pincurchin. Otherwise, the rest of the trainers were the same as that third place list. And I do think the Pincurchin is a really interesting card in here, and I think probably warrants the deck space over the Zapdos, given that you're not going to be attacking very often with that Zapdos. However, the Pincurchin does have a little bit less HP than the Zapdos and has that fighting type weakness. So those are just things to take into consideration when deciding how to build your Pikachu deck. Moving on to our fifth place list here, then we have Charizard. Obviously, this is a fairly standard Charizard list, but I do think that Charizard EX is very, very strong, especially when you're flipping a lot of heads with that Inferno Dance on Moltres EX. And like I said with the Mewtwo deck, I do think that Charizard would get even better if we had a little bit of evolution search to make sure we could get into that Charizard EX more efficiently and more quickly. So 2/2/2 Charizard line in here, 2 Moltres EX, 2 Research, 2 Sabrina, 2 Pokeball, 2 Red Card, 2 X Speed, and 2 Potions to round out this list. I think that the Charizard deck is a very strong deck, but you can have a tough time in the early game if you're not evolving up into those Charmeleons and into your Charizard quickly enough with the deck. Then we have our sixth place deck here, which is another Pikachu Zapdos. This time, though, playing that Voltorb and Electrode in here, so 2/2 Voltorb Electrode, then 2 Pikachu EX, 2 Zapdos EX, and the baby Zapdos. Rounding out the list with 2 Research, 2 Giovanni, 1 Sabrina, 2 Pokeball, 2 Potion, 2 X Speed, and a Red Card. I think the Electrode is cool. 70 on Electro Ball is pretty good, but I do think that the Zebstrika might be better than the Electrode, and then the Pincurchin I do think just is a really interesting inclusion to utilize that paralysis. Now, our 7th place list was a fighting type deck, which makes some sense given how good Pikachu is. Fighting type, hitting it for weakness there could really help you out in a tournament setting like this. Here we have a 2/2 Cubone Marowak line. Marowak EX flips 2 coins for 2 fighting energy, and this attack does 80 damage for each heads. So Bone Ring is very strong if you can hit double heads, but it is on a coin flip, and when you flip double tails, it's really sad. And 80 for 2 on an EX isn't always the best damage. Then there's a 2/2 Sandshrew line in here as well. Sandslash does 70 for 2 fighting. Then 2 Hitmonlee. Hitmonlee has a pretty good attack. It's very much like the Zebstrika's attack for 1 lightning energy, although it's on a basic here for 1 fighting energy. It does 30 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Then rounding out the list with 2 Giovanni, 2 Sabrina, 2 Research, 2 Pokeball, and 2 X Speeds. So very interesting deck list here, and I do think this is sort of a deck that might be easier for people to put together, as long as you can get those Marowak EXs than something like the Pikachu deck. So if you are looking for more of a budget deck potentially, this is the way to go. Then that was our 7th place list. Our 8th place list was another Pikachu Zapdos, and this one also was playing the 2/2 Zebstrika, but no Pincurchin, playing some potions in here, 2 Research, 2 Sabrina, 1 Giovanni, 2 Potion, 2 Pokeball, 2 X Speeds, and then the baby Zapdos as well. So this Pikachu deck obviously taking up 5 of the top 8 spots, is showing that Pikachu is very, very strong. Now, as we scroll down a little bit further, we see a little bit more Pikachu, but we also see 4 Mewtwo's in the top 16. So Mewtwo also just a very strong deck. I would say if we were trying to say what the top 3 decks are in TCG Pocket right now, I would say Pikachu Zapdos is number 1, Mewtwo Gardevoir is number 2, and then probably Charizard is number 3. And we see one of those Charizards in the top 16 here, as well as another one here high up in the top 32. One thing that I do want to call out, though, is as we scroll down into the top 32, we have a lot more more Pikachus, but we have 2 decks that I want to just quickly take a look at. One is sort of a rogue deck that I don't think a ton of people had seen before, and that's this Arbok Wheezing deck. Wheezing obviously is a very strong one prize dark type Pokemon, has that gas leak ability that poisons your opponent's active Pokemon and then tackle for 30 for 1 dark energy. Then Arbok has the corner attack for 60, and during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat. We also have this Muck in here that does 70 plus 50 more damage if your opponent's active Pokemon is poisoned for 3 energy. So doing 120 to poison Pokemon is pretty good. And then obviously we have the Koga, which can put your Muck or Wheezing in the active spot into your hand. So if your opponent attacks into you for not enough damage, you can pick up that Pokemon, heal off all that damage with the Koga, and then we have some potions for healing as well. So I thought this was a really interesting deck. I might have to do a video on this deck later this week. But then the other deck that I wanted to mention here, the 20th place deck, was this Starmie Articuno deck. And I do think that one of the most surprising things, obviously Pikachu is so good, and these decks being, the water decks being weak to lightning, make it pretty tough for them. But I do think that Articuno EX, Starmie EX, and sort of this water package with Misty is very, very strong. So it was surprising to see none of this do this be really, I think, the only Misty deck in the top 32, and I would have expected some of these decks to do a little bit better, because I do think the water Pokemon are very strong, and Misty is the best energy acceleration in the game, one of the best trainer cards in the game. And so this was a really interesting deck. Obviously, that Starmie EX does 90 with 90 damage with Hydro Splash, and then Articuno EX has that Ice Wing attack plus the Blizzard attack for 3 water energies that does 80 and then 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And this deck can just be really, really fast. If you can get the turn 1 Misty, like a turn 1 Blizzard with Articuno EX, if you can flip double heads on Misty, is crazy. Hydro Splash is just such an efficient attack. 2 water energies for 90, and then free retreat on the Starmie is just really, really strong. So obviously with all the lightning out there, that can make things a little bit more difficult for these guys, because they are weak to the best deck in the game. But I do think that the water decks are very strong. Misty's very strong, so I was surprised not to see more of those in the top decks of this tournament. But yeah, I hope this video was helpful for you guys. It's so cool that we're seeing such large online tournaments for TCG Pocket already. $300 in cash prizing, and I hope that we can start to see more of these tournaments pop off. I'm excited to see so many people playing the game, and yeah, I'm just really excited to see what the future holds for Pocket. Can't wait, hopefully someday, to have IRL events in the World Championship circuit for TCG Pocket. And I think the 511 player online tournament with cash prizing is just a very early example of how big this game can be. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.